Hey there, Sanchez back again with an introductory lecture for Chapter 11, Key Issue Number 1, and our focus for today's lecture is all about industrialization. Now, if you think about it, we've been talking about industrialization throughout the unit multiple times because with industrialization, you get a lot of changes. We have social changes in relationship to population growth. We have migration changes, the migration of people moving from the farms, which are rural communities, more to urban and city-based. And of course, we have economic changes. We have diversification of different types of activities, and we also have the economic growth of jobs. So anyway, when we're talking about industrialization, what we're really referring to is the increased manufacturing of finished goods or finished products. In other words, we're having machines that are doing the work that used to be done by humans. We're using those machines from handmade to more of an automated type of system to manufacture those products. So one of the things we're going to see as a consequence or a result of industrialization, we see a decline of primary economic activities. And I don't mean decline in the sense that they're not any less important, but they're just more diversified, and we see a switch as far as our economic activity. Some examples of this decline of primary, we can definitely connect back to our discussion of our agriculture unit, in which we talked about the agricultural revolution. We have the introduction of machines, talked about the seed drill and plow, and once these machines are used, a lot of people had to migrate to find work other places, and we see the Industrial Revolution, Agricultural Revolution very much tied together as far as cause and effect. And a lot of those people simply that were working on the farm, now they went to the cities and found jobs in the factories with the introduction of these new machines. All right, so let's pause for a second. Let's ask ourselves a question here, or ask you a question more specifically. We've definitely talked about the comparison of different stages and stages of production. So if we know that agriculture is part of a primary production, where would industry fall in? Give you a minute to think about it. All right, time's up. If you answered secondary, you are on the right track, my friends. All right, folks, I placed this chart on the haiku page, but just to review, again, we've been talking about the different stages or different categories of economic activity. So you definitely see on the primary production, we have agriculture, as we mentioned, mining, energy, forestry, fisheries. These activities and jobs deal with the extraction of natural resources from the earth. The secondary category, which is relating to our discussion of industrialization, this basically includes the processing of raw materials drawn from the primary sector. These activities and jobs also include the fabrication and components and the assembly of finished goods. So basically, again, manufacturing, we're talking about steel, furniture production, food processing. So primary, we're talking about agriculture. Secondary, we are industrial category. All right, as far as the Industrial Revolution, we can definitely put it in our historical timeline. We're talking about the time period roughly 1750s, give or take, to around the mid-1800s. We definitely know the Industrial Revolution starts in Europe, starts in Great Britain specifically, and will later diffuse out to Europe and around the world. We mentioned in earlier lectures and readings, of course, there's multiple reasons why England industrializes first. It has a high population, access to natural resources, access to waterways, which is huge. Industrial Revolution is machine powered and definitely fueled by engines. So the fact that Great Britain has two natural resources to help it out, number one, coal, and number two, access to water. Those two items are going to be essential as we see the introduction of a huge item that spurred industrialization, which is known as the steam engine. Invented by James Watt, the steam engine is going to give power to most of the Industrial Revolution, and specifically we see the areas of machines used in textile production. Alright, let's go ahead and pause right here, and I'm going to let John Green give us a little backstory, a little insight with his Crash Course Industrial Revolution. Here we go.
Simple statistic that sums it up. Before the Industrial Revolution, about 80% of the world's population was engaged in farming to keep itself and the other 20% of people from starving. Today, in the United States, less than 1% of people list their occupation as farming. I mean, we've come so far that we don't even have to farm flowers anymore. Stan, are these real, by the way? Can't tell if they're made out of foam or digital. So what happened? Technology. Here's my definition. The Industrial Revolution was an increase in production brought about by the use of machines and characterized by the use of new energy sources. Although this will soon get more complicated, for our purposes today, industrialization is not capitalism, although as we will see next week, it is connected to modern capitalism. And the Industrial Revolution began around 1750, and it occurred across most of the Earth, but it started in Europe, especially Britain. What happened? Well, let's go to the thought bubble. The innovations of the Industrial Revolution were intimately interconnected. Like, look for instance at the British textile industry. The invention of the flying shuttle by John Kay in 1733 dramatically increased the speed of weaving, which in turn created demand for yarn, which led to inventions like the spinning jenny and the water frame. Soon these processes were mechanized using water power until the steam engine came along to make flying shuttles really fly in these huge cotton mills. The most successful steam engine was built by Thomas, they didn't name anything after me, Newcomen, to clear water out of mines, and because water was cleared out of those mines, there was more coal to power more steam engines, which eventually led to the fancying up of the Newcomen steam engine by James I Got a Unit of Power and a University named after me Watt, whose engine made possible not only railroads and steamboats, but also ever more efficient cotton mills. And for the first time, chemicals other than stale urine, I wish I was kidding, were being used to bleach the cloth that people wore. The first of which was sulfuric acid, which was created in large quantities only thanks to lead-lined chambers, which would have been impossible without lead production rising dramatically right around 1750 in Britain, thanks to lead foundries powered by coal. And all these factors came together to make more yarn that could be spun and bleached faster and cheaper than ever before, a process that would eventually culminate in $18 Crash Course Mongol shirts, available now at dftba.com.
Alright, let me get back to the lecture before you go online to order your John Green t-shirts. Anyway, folks, getting back to our discussion of the Industrial Revolution, when we're looking at geographic factors that are going to determine where factories are located, one of the major things we're going to see is that they're located next to a water source or a riverway. Now, originally, one of the reasons why the factories were near large rivers and such is because a lot of the early mechanisms would have like a large wheel and the water would flow through and it would turn the different devices of the machine. Eventually, we get to the place when we have the invention of the engine. We don't have to necessarily be by the water to turn the wheel. We can take the engines anywhere we go because now we can transport coal, which now can heat up the water, and again we get to that steam engine. So in this case, that was very good for England because now we can pretty much create the factory wherever we want because now you can bring the coal to the factory. Now, saying all of that, we still have to consider the fact that some factories chose to still be near water, and not in the case for a power source, which you think about it, it's going to take a lot of water power to necessarily operate those machines. What the factories did is they placed themselves near a water source because that is a great method of transportation. For example, one of the things we've seen being built that was mentioned in your reading is the introduction of canals. Canals are a great way, of course, to transport goods. And fact of the matter is, transportation on a boat was one of the fastest and cheapest ways to transport different products. Now, this is really where we get down to one of the notes I want you to jot down is we're talking about infrastructure. One of the consequences of the Industrial Revolution is we primarily see infrastructure like trains, railways, canals for the transportation of manufactured goods. Alright, the last piece I want to leave off on is in class we're going to be talking about the different industrial regions. So on the map we have, of course, North America, which is the American Industrial Belt, or the quote Rust Belt. After deindustrialization, you have the Canadian Industrial Heartland, or Canada's Main Street. We're also going to be looking at Europe, which includes the British Midlands, the Ruhr Valley, Northern Italy, or also referred to as the Third Italy. We have the European Industrial Core. We're also again going to have a discussion or talk about Asia, which includes countries like Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and China. And we'll also be looking at the different other world industrial regions. All right, so with that, I'll go ahead and leave us off there, and we'll continue our discussion of Industrial Revolution and industrial regions. All right, thanks guys. I'll see you in class.